Welcome to Entrepreneurship at Rowan, an official production of the award-winning Rowan Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. We cover the entrepreneurial pulse of Rowan students, faculty, and alumni, prepared to be Rowan proud.
This is the Entrepreneurship at Rowan podcast, and I'm your host, Antonia Nizzolo. Today, we're talking with Brandon Graham, co-founder and CEO of Arke Aeronautics, a life-saving situational intelligence platform for first responders. Hi, Brandon. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So for those of us who haven't heard of Arke, can you explain your company and what your mission is?
Sure. So first responders are real life superheroes, but the information that they have oftentimes is not accessible to them. Meaning that as good as much as they want to help, oftentimes they just don't have the tools that they need to save you. And Arke is a public safety platform that connects first responders to enhance 911 information before they arrive on scene. So they know where to go and what to expect when they get there. That way they can help save you as much as possible.
What are some of those enhancements that you offer the first responders?
Sure. So we offer first responders essentially a curated dashboard of all the information that they might need when they're responding to an emergency. And as you can imagine, so first responders refers to law enforcement, emergency medical services, and firefighters. So depending on the type of person that's responding and the type of emergency that they're responding to, that information changes very rapidly. So our technology uses something called data fusion to take over 6 live data streams and 30 data types. For example, video, if there's a CCTV camera pointed at, in the location of the emergency, or even things like weather data and traffic. That way they can better route their trucks on scene and know who's going to be arriving and when. And then we take all that information and perform, like I mentioned, data fusion on that and put it into a single dashboard for the first responder that's been customized to their needs on their cell phone, on their mobile device.
Awesome. So Brandon, you went to Rowan University and your undergrad degree was in engineering. Did you intend at the start of your college career to pursue entrepreneurship with this degree?
I don't believe so. I think my goal with the engineering degree was that the ability to understand how things work in the world around me and be able to fix those things and make them better. I think that was a really powerful message and story that I bought into. And so my engineering degree was really about understanding technology, how it helps people in the world, and then being able to kind of be a student of that and apply what I'm interested in to help improve some of those problems wherever I could. And that's really kind of what Arke is, right? I'm not a first responder, but this technology I hope someday might be able to save somebody's life.
How old were you when you discovered entrepreneurship? Did you have a parent or close family friend who started their own business?
Yeah, so I think I've been around entrepreneurs my whole life, although I didn't know the word until I got to Rowan. My father and my grandfather both have had businesses throughout their lives. My grandfather worked multiple jobs, one of which was a Thuman's meat route. He would actually go around selling meat to local delis. And, hearing stories as a kid about the truck breaking down and customers stiffing him out of money and losing product and people screwing him over on contracts and things, that was what I grew up with. I mean, there's pictures of me playing with calculators that would print out receipts, as a kid. So I grew up with those stories, and I don't think I ever realized the stories that I was hearing were kind of pearls that they had learned, even though, a Thuman's meat route has almost nothing to do with emergency first response. I think the lessons learned from the business side, they directly apply, or at least apply somewhat.
Yeah. Can you describe for us the inception of your idea for your company?
Yeah, so it goes the same way as just about every adult in the United States. If you didn't know, about 700,000 people dial 911 every day. in the US, and they wait about 9 minutes on average for help to arrive. And the founders of Arke, myself, Jonathan Panera, and Sherman Hartman, who's an active first responder, he's a professional firefighter. We all realized, I was friends with Sherman at the time, and I met John. Actually, you introduced me to John, which is a really interesting point here, coming full circle. But we'd all realized that we had dialed 911 recently for a life-threatening scenario, and help didn't come on time. And it wasn't because they were lazy. It had nothing to do with that. I mean, they were rushing to the scene, but they didn't have the information that they needed to get to the right scene, to get to the right place in time. And that's something that Sherman experiences every day when he goes out on the trucks. Is he's basically asked to run towards burning buildings, oftentimes with only the address and the type of emergency, without any other information. And so we said there's got to be a better way, and that's really the impetus for why we created Arke, is to help first responders to make sure that they have the information that they need to not only save the caller's life, but to keep them safe while they're doing their job.
What benefits did you gain by participating in the Idea Challenge and other kinds of business model competitions?
I think the sole purpose of the Idea Challenge is to realize that having an idea is not equivalent to entrepreneurship. It's a prerequisite, but I think far more important is the combination of an idea that solves a problem that A, somebody in the real world is experiencing, and B, you can define that type of person, and then C, they have the ability to mobilize either their time or capital around solving that problem, right? That's what I'm always thinking about, is how can I demonstrate traction? Well, there's two ways. You can get people to mobilize their time to spend time with it, or you can get people to give you money, right? Mobilize their capital around it. And so that Idea Challenge, that's what we learned from that, is how to show traction, what motivates investors and customers. It's time and money.
So you've gone through a couple of these competitions and you're growing the business. In these early stages, were most of your activities planned out with a blueprint, or were they only realized once you encountered obstacles?
One of my favorite philosophers, Mike Tyson, has a quote that basically says, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. And I think there's a lot of getting punched in the mouth that happens in entrepreneurship. I'll give you one example. I remember a conversation with an investor early on that basically said, you don't have a business here. This is not investable. And what they were telling me was, they weren't saying that they didn't think that we could be successful. What they were saying was, what the story that you just told me, the narrative that you just told me, you need to figure out a way to do that differently in order to explain the value here. So they were actually validating our business, but they were giving us very hard advice. And so I think, we went into that conversation feeling like, oh man, we're going to kill this. This person is going to love the idea. They're going to get it. And a lot of times that happens, but you get this advice that kind of takes you on an emotional roller coaster a little bit. It's not all positive and great. And I think the lesson learned out of that is, you can't take everything that somebody says and then just say, well, it was negative, so let's just go close up shop. It's only over once you acknowledge the fact that it's over. So I think one of our skill sets, on the team is that we have uniquely is to be able to take that feedback, not give up, pivot, or hold a perspective, and then move on from it. So yes, we've always had a plan, but I think one of the things that's kept us successful is making sure that while we're fully committed to the current plan can be changed. And I think that served us well.
Do you have any advice on how to discriminate between helpful advice and genuine criticism that will grow your business and help you along, and then criticism that is either not from a good place and it's not truthful, or it won't help out?
I would recommend first to either read the Cliff Notes or actually go out and seek to read Principles by Ray Dalio. One of the core elements of his book is to always seek to triangulate information, right? When he says, when the path is unclear, proceed with caution and collect data. And I think that's good advice in general, good life advice. But in business, it's really good advice because nobody knows your business better than you, right? And the second that that statement becomes incorrect is when you've lost. And so for us, distinguishing between good and bad advice has always come down to asking as many people as we can those same questions and not trying to program them with what we think they should say, but letting them just honestly tell us. And I think if you start to hear the same things over and over and over again from different people with different perspectives, there may be something there and you should definitely address it. The other side of that is there are two types of advice that you can get, especially in entrepreneurship, from mentors or community members. The first is advice that comes from someone typically who doesn't really know what they're talking about. And it ends up making you feel really bad about yourself. And you get a lot of that as an entrepreneur. You know, everybody likes to tell you how much they know, especially investors. The second type is typically from people who have been in your shoes, who have swept the floor and sweated payroll, right? And that advice typically comes from, again, people who actually know what they're talking about, who have been there, done that. But also an indicator of that is when they share you information or a pearl of wisdom and it makes you feel like you learned something. Like, wow, I don't feel like crap because somebody just, told me, made me feel like I don't know anything about my business with their advice, right?
Tell us about the RIVF's investment in Arke. What was the process like when you first went to the foundation and were looking for money?
Typically, ideas go and seek out money, right? There's investors, and then a lot of people find out that they exist and start pitching them. And so there's so many deals out there and so many awesome ideas. Investors oftentimes they find that they don't have enough money to support all of them. And quite frankly, a lot of the ideas just aren't viable businesses. So in order to protect that money, in order to make sure that it goes and does the most good for whatever their thesis is, right? In this case, RIVF is a $5 million for-profit fund. So it means that they have to generate a profit. They have to sustain and grow the fund. So that's their thesis. And they typically invest up to $250,000 per round, up to $500,000 per company. And their mindset is, let's grow the Rowan and South Jersey ecosystem of entrepreneurs while we're at it. And so for us, as a Rowan built, Rowan founded and backed company, now let's be a Rowan funded company. And so the process basically looked like us reaching out to the fund. They were aware of the company. We were on their radar for a while. And then we made a presentation to them, a formal funding presentation, and they thought that we resonated with the group, and they took us into what's called due diligence. And due diligence is basically a way for them to get to know the company much more intimately. They look through all your financial data. They look through your projections, the relationships you have, the legal structure of the entity. All of these things culminates into a report, which is published by RIVF, that basically signals investors to say, here is everything that you need to know to get educated about this company in a very objective way. So it's not the CEO now pitching the company. It's an objective report that has all that information in it. And what they found in the due diligence report were a couple of positives and a couple of negatives. The positives were we had a great team with a great idea that served an underserved market. And some of the negatives were that it was a young team. It's a very early, high-risk startup. And they recognized that they were investing in a learning curve to a certain extent. But at the end of the day, they believed in this business opportunity, and I think they've been a great partner, and we're really appreciative to have that, because truly without that support, it would have been very difficult for us to raise that money.
What does success look like to you? What could that story write-up look like?
Well, there's probably many forms that it can come in, but first and foremost, when all is said and done, I think success is a combination of people coming together to help something grow. And a lot, that's a direct representation of Arke. It's not my idea that I'm talking to Sherman or Jonathan about anymore. This is a company. And so I think success for us is, at the end of the day, can we all shake hands and say, wow, this has been an amazing experience. Also, this is a for-profit enterprise, and besides the learning experience, we want to make money.
Yeah.
We want to generate revenue and be sustainable and provide a return for our investors at RIVF, and also the local community. Now, remember, RIVF was just the lead investor. We actually took investment from the City Science Center of Philadelphia through their Launch Lane cohort, their accelerator there, as well as private investors from the accredited angel investors from the area. So they're included in that bucket as well.
Okay. Any last thoughts or parting advice for the Rowan listeners, the Rowan students who might be wanting to start their own business in the future or now?
Question everything. Be constantly curious, and don't be afraid to ask for help.
Thank you so much, Brandon, for introducing us to Arke and your story. I loved having you on the show, and we look forward to seeing Arke and your future success.
Thank you for listening. Rowan is proud to be an official knowledge hub of the International Council for Small Business. Our AACSB award-winning entrepreneurship programs challenge students to solve real problems in bold and impactful ways. If you're interested in supporting entrepreneurship at Rowan, or want to get more involved by hiring an intern, speaking to a class, or being featured as a case study, contact us at rcie@rowan.edu.